Welcome back to the September 7th edition of Fox Magazine. I'm Edie Hill. A little later in the show, we'll go behind the scenes of two of the hottest musicals on Broadway and also take a look at a man who gives away wheelchairs. But now, 9/11/2001, America's historical day of infamy #2. And since that horrendous day when we were so viciously attacked by a cowardly enemy, we first ask, how could it happen? And second, where were you? Author Jeanette Reynolds asked that question to both celebrities and everyday folks and put their answers in her book, Where Were You on 9/11? A book well worth the magazine's attention.
What was your motivation in putting together this book?
You know, it was kind of unusual, like the event was. About a week before 9/11, I had just coincidentally concluded the sale of an interview magazine I founded in 1994. So I was looking forward to some time off and not writing or interviewing any more people, to be very frank. And I ended up in New York on a rather unexpected trip at Ground Zero, and standing a few yards from a smoldering crater in the middle of that city just took my breath away.
Are you concerned that people are going to accuse you of exploiting this tragedy for profit?
I'm really not, and I'll tell you why. It's almost quite the contrary. I put every penny of my own money into this book, and again, really, I felt very compelled to get these stories out. As I said, I had no intention of writing a book or really writing anything for some time, but the story kind of took me, and I think that that's true of probably most journalists that are covering maybe something that is quite traumatic and compelling like this event was.
Now, you've gotten the accounts of famous people and non-famous people. Tell us some of the most compelling stories that you heard.
You know, they're compelling across the board, but I will, you know, flesh out a few of the names that I think are rather interesting. Of course, we have Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York, and she watched on screen live as basically people that she worked shoulder to shoulder with year after year at her charity, Chances for Children, in the 101st floor of the World Trade Center perish right before her eyes. And then we have a worker from Asbury Park, New Jersey, who happened to be in the city that day, and he was an OSHA certified volunteer worker who ended up working in the bucket brigade right in the pit, right in the Ground Zero area. So again, across the board, the stories are just very diverse and very unique, as are the personalities in the book.
You also heard from Donald Trump. What was his account?
Donald had an interesting account. Again, it was kind of interesting to see the psychology behind how humans react to trauma. Donald took a very kind of stance with regard to rebuilding the skyline of New York and where we're going next, and not really to dwell a great deal on what had happened. It's obvious that it affected him very deeply because he watched it from the window of his penthouse apartment in the Trump building. And he said when he saw those buildings come down, to him as a builder and architect, it was unacceptable. But I think, again, that came from his, you know, feeling toward this tragedy.
Yeah, but it's interesting that you point out that his approach to it and what he focused on was different. You mentioned that your book highlights the differences within each of us and
Yes.
how monumentally key those differences are to the healing process and to regaining and building a wholesome perspective. Explain that, the differences in how people are coping with this.
I love that question. I'm glad you brought it up, because everyone does have a different perspective on this, and it was surprising to see that, you know, you get a group of 10 people, there's 10 different opinions out there. And I don't know if that's particularly surprising, but I just find it very interesting. And I think it's very key to the healing process, because I guess most people tend to think that we all have the same feelings about this, and at the core we do. However, it's so important to hear what someone else has to say and how they react, again, to this sort of, you know, horrific tragedy that it was.
How did you find the people? Obviously, the famous people, you know, you could look up, but this person in Asbury Park, for example.
Oh, you know, I have to tell you, the writing of this book is almost another book in itself, and I write about that in the epilogue. And again, the only reason why I bring it up is because this book served as a metaphor for my own life, in that it's life-changing. It completely transformed my life. It really did. I had no intention, as I said, of writing a book. I was going to take some time off. This story, this tragedy grabbed me, and I literally, you know, lived with it for 7 months.
Right. And you can catch Ms. Reynolds on Fox & Friends with me next week as she follows up on many of the interviews